Hello, Mr. Razal. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fine. I'm willing to ask you something. Please put this stuff into a picture and a relevant context. We'll be talking about the most cynical, shallow, and spoiled, cult of personality. Actually, my question is, who Baha'u'llah really was? A religious fundamentalist, a political operative, a primitive sermonizer, and accomplice of worldly secular powers. Who Baha'u'llah really was, because reborn and, re-elected as a demagogue, he mastered the use of redemption to put a spell on his followers. So again, behold the picture. Who Baha'u'llah really was wonders me. Please.
Well, I have recourse to a Persian commentary on the Surah al-Fātihā by the point of the Bayān. This Persian commentary, was actually discovered by Mirza Mustafa Khatib in the house of a Isfahani Baha'i, where the primal point actually predicts what is going to transpire after he is gone. And who is he? Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri is none other than the return, the Rij'at of Abu Bakr. And I would go even one further. I would say the Rij'at of Abu Bakr and Umar ibn Khattab, La'natullah alayhimma. That is who he was from the Bayani theological point of view. Aba Shurur wa Aba Dawahi, the father of lies and the father of calamities, in one person. This guy was a political operator. At some point in the very early years of the Bayān, and I would say particularly when the primal point sent the letter of succession, nominating Sopa Azal as his mirror, as evidence of testimonies of people who were actually in attendance, Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri's jealousy and the most base elements of his character took over, that one can say that from that point forward, from the moment that his brother was nominated as the successor of the Bab, any faith that he had, any genuine faith that he had, was gone. Because all throughout that time, for example, if the primal point had nominated someone else, if Quddus had lived, for example, and had become automatically the successor of the primal point, I don't think Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri would have acted this way. But there was something about his younger brother, this little stepbrother of his, that he had raised, this orphaned little boy, something like that, to the ego of a man, a aristocrat of his, breeding, is a blow to his ego. And we have, for example, the testimony that Avare puts in the first volume of his Kashf al-Hil, that he got from none other than Mirza Khan Nuri and the people who were there at the time that Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri was arrested after the failed assassination attempt on Nasruddin Shah. And Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri very unequivocally stated that he was not a Wahabi. He was not a believer in the Bayān, and moreover was not even a believer in Islam and Muhammad and the Imams, peace be upon all of them. So that is who Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri was. He was a very Machiavellian political operator. And during the course of the years in Baghdad, we begin to see this. Now, the Baha'is have suppressed a lot of this evidence, but the testimonies of these evidence are, spread throughout multiple accounts by multiple people. And luckily now, with, for example, the Princeton collections being publicized, and much of the elements of the Brown collection being publicized, and now with the Cyprus Bayani Codex coming out, it is very evident that this guy took over the machinery of the Baha'i organization, and that was because of what the primal point had commanded Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri in a letter where he addresses him as 238, to take care of Sopa Azal and to be the main material provider for the ministry of Sopa Azal as the mirror of the Bayān. Baha'u'llah took advantage of this and took advantage of his own younger brother, and basically became the be-all and end-all of the organization itself, to the point that even many of the witnesses of the Bayān, these were the people who were supposed to be the immediate deputies of Subha Azal in Baghdad, were complaining about the state of affairs. Some of them couldn't see Subha Azal. Mullah Muhammad Jafar al-Naraqi complains, that he, even though he was one of the nominated witnesses, for a part of Iran that was very important to the Baha'i cause, that in the first initial journeys that he had made to Baghdad, he was prevented from seeing Subha Azal. This changed with Sayyid Muhammad Esfani, Abu Wahid, that Subha Azal labeled him as, where he did manage to get into the presence of Subha Azal, despite the attempts by Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri to bar that. Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri, first creates an industry around his brother, but simultaneously begins to undermine his brother. The Primal Point had ordered Subha Azal to protect his life, to protect his own life under any cost, under any circumstances. There's one passage that Subha Azal, for example, quotes in Kitab al-Mustaghiz, the book of the sleeper awakened, from the Primal Point, that the Primal Point tells Subha Azal that you should preserve yourself even if there's not a single person in the world who believes in you. Right?
Right.
Baha'u'llah took advantage of all of this. And as he got more and more of the Baha'i machinery, and I describe a lot of what this meant in that organizational hierarchy paper about the witnesses of the Bayān, he had the mechanisms of the financial mechanisms completely in his hand, right? He had all the communication portals and flow in his hands. Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri was the doer of everything. He had control of the entire organization. However, this is where I find this issue very interesting. During that 2-year period where he was basically chased off by the witnesses of the Bayān out of Baghdad into Suleymania, right? The Baha'i organization continued to function well. For some reason, when he returns, Subha Azal regrants the control of this machinery back into the hands of his older brother, mainly because of the fact that, Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri had just put down a very serious challenge to the leadership of Subha Azal in the form of the insanity that gripped Asadullah Dayan, who made a direct challenge to Subha Azal and was claiming to be the promised one of the Bayān. The testimony of Ammeh, of Tanbih al-Na'imeen, and elsewhere, and even implicit evidence within Kitab al-Badi itself, firmly puts the responsibility for the murder of Asadullah Dayan himself at the feet of Baha'u'llah and not Subha Azal. Nevertheless, this tells you that the doer of everything, the man, the real strong man, the Saddam Hussein, right? We're making that comparison since we're talking about Iraq. The Saddam Hussein of that organization, the strongman, was none other than Mirza Hussain Ali Nuri. He was the doer. Now, the Baha'is have, very badly and very transparently changed the narrative of what actually occurred.
So that's my question, Mr. Azal. My last question, my second and last question, here is a problem. Here's the deal. We're seeing a quote-unquote a saint in the making, whose sites and relics will one day be venerated, who is already the personal object of a following that is not much short of cultish, Actually, my question is, sainthood is no small claim, Although, a saint, a prophet, categorically speaking, Mr. Azal, is required to have done good works, right? Possessed heroic virtues, and to have demonstrated the logically and logistically difficult quality of ubiquity, for instance. Many people right now who are not even Baha'is have already decided that Baha'u'llah is a saint. Tell me about this old little mountebank, Mr. Freydun Bahman, and his good friend, Dr. Abbas Amanet.
Freydun Bahman. Abbas Amonat and Feridun Bahman wrote that book together from Tehran to Akka, right? And they spent the introduction of that book with 100 pages or so, basically ranting against Sopa Azal. Now, this book has now found an English publication under the name of Feridun Bahman himself, under the title "The Baha'i Community in Iran," right?
That's right. Yeah.
Now, these people, and Abbas Amonat particularly claims that they have come across Qajar era documents, right? That showed that Sopa Azal was a nobody. Okay, most of the documents from the Qajar era place Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri in the Baghdad period as being the head of a crime syndicate. They paint a picture of Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri as a violent thug and violent criminal who surrounded himself with violent thugs and violent criminals. See, this is the double-edged sword. If Amonat and Bahman want to walk that road, that's a road that is full of is a minefield full of tripwires. The fact is that Sopa Azal was fulfilling the instructions and the commands that the primal point put before him to protect his life by any means necessary. And this is the reason why Sopa Azal went into a sort of occultation during the Baghdad period and wouldn't talk to anybody, and made his older brother the middleman. And what did this older brother Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri do? He created a mafia. And that's what I was saying.
So you believe he's more of a fixer, right?
He was not more of a fixer. Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri was the fixer. And in fact, Sopa Azal called his older brother from Suleymania when he had gone there for 2 years to come back to Baghdad and deal with the issue of Asadullah Dayan, right? These witnesses of the Bayān who were residents in Baghdad at the time that Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri was in Suleymani, people like Abu Wahid, Sayyid Muhammad Isfahani, Mullah Muhammad Ja'far al-Naraqi, the two brothers Siraj and Qahir, etc. These people, although they had their own polemics with the single follower of Asadullah Dayan, who was also a turncoat witness, Tabrizi. The fact is that it was only when Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri came back from Suleymania to Baghdad, and when Asadullah Dayan himself had come to Baghdad, where the fix was in, as it were. And that fix was, as the testimony, his own testimony of letters in Tanbih al-Na'imin shows, and as other Bayanis have commented, the person who murdered Asadullah Dayan, right, who ordered him drowned in the Tigris, was Baha'ullah. And his servant, this guy who actually did the deed, this Muhammad al-Mazandarani was a servant and no care of Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri Baha'ullah.
I see. So you believe this guy, this fraud, has a theory of power, right? Has a theory of submission and gratitude. Yeah. So please finally wrap him up in a few words. This, because his words were deemed, as that of ordained of God, because, for instance, this guy, Nabil Zarandi, finally, the emissary of a very, determined and very detrimental, politicized, canonization, right? This guy was behind so many twists and turns in the current history, and it really blew me up, when I started reading his stuff. Nevertheless, right now they are trying to canonize Hossein Ali Nuri, another way, right?
Look, the Baha'is are not having, if this is a business, right, and a product, its customer base is dying. It really is as simple as that. As an organization, as a creed, they have nothing to offer anybody. And the amount of scandals over the last, 50 years that has gripped this cult, it has reached such a level that they're not finding more recruits. They have not, this entry by troops that they kept promising people would happen by the year 2000 has not happened. There has not been the lesser peace by that year either. They have nothing to offer. This is a cult, like the Jehovah's Witnesses or the Scientologists, etc. And the spirituality is very thin. I mean, we can talk about Baha'ullah's own writings and how much of it is just basically a very whitewashed version of Bayanic stuff together with Sufi stuff that he got from here and there. There's nothing.
And Mr. Azal, Baha'ullah Shams Haqiqat was the outcome of a documentary of the same name, scripted by Hassan al-Yuzi. That's true. What is the main idea behind this work?
The main idea behind this work is that up until the time, there had not been an actual biography of Baha'u'llah. Nabil's narrative, this is pseudo-Zarandi, the original does not even exist. Or at least the work that was put out, as Nabil Zarandi's Dawnbreakers in the original English is not the work that Nabil Zarandi wrote. That book was put out because there was a lacuna. There was a huge gap in an actual biographical study about Baha'u'llah. So Hassan al-Yuzi, at the time the lead propagandist of the Baha'i organization, propagandist historian, put this hagiographical, history out there in order to fill this gap. Now, anyone who reads that book will immediately see that this is just a cheerleading of the official narratives, okay? And that there isn't really substantial historical evidence and historical evidence that actually jives with other historical evidence of the time to this study, or hagiography rather. And that's why they put this out. Now, it's over 40 years since that book first came out, and many of the works of Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri have still not been translated. We don't have a translation of the Kitab al-Badi, and in fact, they will never do that, because a translation of the Kitab al-Badi where Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri purportedly refutes the claims of his Bayani detractors has so much nonsense in it, and so many below-the-belt material that if they ever translated this work properly into English or any other language, there would be a stampede out by troops, especially by these very gullible and silly and stupid Western Baha'is. So that the purpose of that book was basically to keep a certain flock within the Baha'i organization.
That's right.
Because there was a halo of sanctity created around Baha'u'llah without a proper, extensive biography about him. So, the USJ commissioned, their propagandist Al-Yuzi to write this. He wrote this, and the rest is history.
I beg for a comment, Mr. Azal. This book's emphasis, special emphasis on the poorest of poor, so-called, quote, the poorest of poor and the lowest of low, the lowest of the low and the poorest of the poor. It's, a catchphrase from Al-Yuzi when he wants to describe Akka. And this phrase, apparently served to reinforce the impression of, Akka as a city of dreadful night, impression which justly irritates, many Arabs, And the pleasant surprise that awaits the visitors to Akka is this: it is poor and crowded and dirty in ways which are hard to exaggerate. But it is anything but objects. Its people are neither inert, again, nor cringing. They work and they struggle. And as a general rule, Mr. Azal, they do not beg. They do not beg. This is a city of people.
What the Baha'is say about Akka is one thing. It's very easy for these Baha'i narratives about the nature of Akka to be refuted when you go to Ottoman era chronicle history descriptives, geographies of the empire and what they say about that area. In fact, they say the very opposite of what the Baha'is say. Even during that period of the late 1860s, early 70s when the Baha'is went there. The reason why the Baha'i chronicles depict Akka in that way is because they're trying to create an ambience of they're fabricating a narrative of suffering and hardship on their
written by Baha'u'llah,
on their cult figure. Otherwise, that area of Palestine on the Mediterranean, once you go out of the city walls, there were farmlands there. There was it was lush and beautiful. The bay is absolutely gorgeous, But they want to depict Akka in that way, in order to reinforce this narrative of suffering and hardship on Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri and his companions.
And specifically, Mr. Azal, his gullibility, his audacity to write this stuff, this blatant lie that this city was, kind of blessed and befouled under the feet of Baha'u'llah.
These Brits, these Anglo-Americans, and these Zionists who have given such a free rein to the Baha'is to basically completely, whitewash history, don't seem to realize that at some point in their own, in the bigger picture, this is a disadvantage to them as well. That they are willfully basically facilitating the propagation of fake news.
That's right.
And I've said this before, that the real creators of fake news are none other than the Baha'is themselves. I mean, no organization, no group of people has peddled this amount of lies and whitewashing.
Pioneers of BBC Persian, right?
Pioneers of the most unbelievable, shameless lies to history has been perpetrated by these people. Historical criminals, as far as I'm concerned. So, this stuff can be taken with a grain of salt. And of course, in the Islamic world, these claims by the Baha'is are laughed at because, like I said, people know what Akka was like. And so here's Mirza Hussein Ali Nuri, in a very nice Mediterranean kind of environment, claiming what he does about the place, and then in prison claiming to be, Innani ana Allah al-Masjun al-Farid. One of the most ridiculous statements
very ridiculous, hilarious,
ever made in the history of religion. So these things are what they are. But these Baha'is are shameless. They have no honor. None of it. From Fereydun Bahman to that spineless. Hold on. From Fereydun Bahman to that spineless, Anglo native informer Mujan Momin, to all the rest of these people, going all the way back to Mirza Abul Razl Golpayagani. These people have no conscience. As Sayyid Khan Kurdistani very eloquently put, they have no conscience. They lie about historical facts. And this is the nature of the leader and the led, right? This is what these people are. So going back to your original question, who was Baha'u'llah? Baha'u'llah was the Dajjal. He was the Antichrist.
Antichrist, yes. Period.
Period.
Thank you very much. Indeed, that was very nice talking to you again. Hope we'll be talking more about, the rise of Baha'u'llah and basically Baha'u'llah in theory and practice next time. Thank you very much again. Inshallah. Bye-bye.